Imagine waking up one day and finding out that everything you believed about your life was a lie. The wife you shared your house with, the mother of your children, the woman you trusted, disappeared in an instant. She took the bank accounts, sold the heirlooms, and disappeared without a word. To all who witnessed it, it appeared as betrayal, the kind that tears apart families forever. But then, in the midst of heartbreak, you hear it. One voicemail. A shaking voice, fearful, pleading, "David, if you're listening, don't believe what you see. I had no choice. They forced me to do it. Look under the floorboard in our room. Please, I love you." That single message would untangle 12 years of deception, expose a life of duplicity, and pull David into a tale more sinister than he could ever have conceived. This isn't a story about betrayal. It's a story about survival, secrets, and the terrifying truth that sometimes the people around us are battling wars we can't even perceive. David and Claire were the poster-perfect couple. They'd been wed for more than a decade, having 2 children in a suburban residential community. To their friends, they were rock solid. To the neighbors, coveted. To one another, at least in David's mind, they were soulmates. But cracks were beginning to appear beneath the surface. David started seeing odd things. Tiny bank withdrawals, invoices from locations he'd never visited. Nights when Claire said she was staying late at work, but returned home with alibis that didn't make sense. When David brought it up, Claire would smile, touch his hand, and say, "You're worrying too much. Trust me." And he did. For 12 years he trusted her. Until the day she disappeared. It all began with a sound most of us hear every single day, a phone notification. But for David, this was not another call, or a spam text, or an alert to make a payment. No. This sound was weighted with a secret that had been patiently masquerading in plain sight for more than 10 years. A secret that would destroy the cornerstone of his marriage, shake his family to their roots, and force him into a world of peril he never requested to inhabit. David had no reason to think his world was about to come crashing down. He was, for the most part, a typical man. Stable job, small house, 2 children he loved. He wasn't rich, but he was content. He wasn't popular, but he was well regarded. And perhaps most of all, he really thought that he was happily married. His wife, Claire, was all he had imagined in a mate. Beautiful indeed, but beyond that, kind, gentle, supportive. She remembered birthdays, packed lunchboxes, and stayed up late finishing school projects. Theirs was a romance, at least to the world, almost too perfect. High school sweethearts who reconnected in their adult years. A whirlwind romance that culminated in marriage. A life that seemed constructed on trust, devotion, and loyalty. But perfect stories are often the ones hiding the darkest truths. Looking back, David could admit that there were small cracks. Things he noticed but brushed aside. A strange credit card charge here. A late night at work there. A phone call Claire took in the other room, her voice hushed and tense. Once, when he asked her why she seemed distant, Claire smiled faintly and kissed his cheek. "You worry too much," she told him. "I'm just tired." And David trusted her. Because that's what trust does. It blinds you, it makes you think that the people you care about would never lie to you. Nevertheless, something in him, some tiny spark, sensed that not all was right. He dismissed it. Because what else could he do? What else could he do but trust the woman he constructed his life around? It was a Wednesday morning, unremarkable in all respects. David woke up, prepared for work, and poured the coffee. He realized Claire was not in bed, but that was to be expected. She often woke up early to go jogging, or to make breakfast for the kids. But as the minutes ticked by, a sense of unease crept in. No clatter of pans from the kitchen, no dripping of water from the shower, no children laughing at the table. The house was quiet. Too quiet. David went through each of her rooms, shouting her name. No reply. He assumed she had departed early to do some errands. But then he saw something odd. The jewelry box on her dresser lay open and empty. Her closet half emptied. The kids' photos missing off the nightstand. Panic flooded his veins as he ran downstairs. His laptop, gone. The safe, open, And when he looked at the bank account on his phone, he turned cold with blood. Every penny had been taken out. Claire was missing, and she had left everything behind. David backed away, struggling to catch his breath. His brain couldn't accept it. This wasn't possible. Claire wasn't that kind of person. She wouldn't just vanish. She wouldn't just leave her children, her house, their life together. But the evidence lay before him. The stolen valuables. The drained accounts. The silence. He attempted to phone her. No response. He phoned her work. They indicated she hadn't been in for days. He phoned her friends. Most of them hadn't heard from her in weeks. Some looked visibly uneasy even being asked, as if they knew something but didn't want to say anything. By the afternoon, news had traveled. Family called, alarmed and perplexed. Neighbors gossiped, some attempted to comfort him. Others regarded him skeptically. For when a wife disappears like that, people wonder, did she go willingly? Was she fleeing from something, or someone? And gradually, viciously, a story began to take shape. She must have found someone else. I heard she had debts, gambling maybe. Do you think she was unhappy in the marriage? Every whisper was a knife. David ached to scream, to yell that it didn't make any sense. Claire adored her children. She adored their existence. She wasn't the kind to just disappear. As every day passed, however, his hope faded. The police weren't very cooperative. Adults could choose to disappear if they pleased. Without proof of wrongdoing, their options were limited. David tossed at night, thinking about each conversation, each look, each little inconsistency he had overlooked. Was there another male? Was she secretly plotting this for months, even years? The questions ravaged him. But the truth, the actual truth, was blacker than he could even think. And the first clue of it would come, not from an investigator, not from a friend, but from one solitary, unheeded voicemail. It lingered in his phone for days. Unplayed, unseen, bumped by calls from anxious family members and constant alerts. When he finally heard it, his world changed. There was silence at first, then a nervous intake of breath, then Claire's voice. David, if you're hearing this, don't believe what you see. Had no choice. They made me do it. Everything I took. It wasn't for me. Look under the floorboard in our room. Please, I love you. Goodbye. The line went dead. David Set's knees gave out. He replayed the voicemail over and over, holding on to every word. He made me do it. It wasn't for me. Look under the floorboard. It didn't sound like betrayal. It sounded like fear, desperation, a plea. And David knew, in that instant, that all he believed he knew, about Claire, about their marriage, about her disappearance, was a lie. She hadn't just run. She hadn't just left her family behind. Something much larger, much darker, was going on. And now, whether he wanted it or not, he was involved. The ideal marriage, the blissful family, the peaceful suburban existence, it had all been a facade. And the reality buried underneath was going to alter everything. It was a Wednesday morning, when David's world came crashing down. He awoke to an empty home. Claire was not there. Her clothes were gone. The jewelry gone. The savings account cleaned out. Even the title to their home had been transferred. David initially believed it had to be an error, a bank mistake, possibly even an robbery. But reality soon caught up with him. Claire had walked out with everything. Word spread rapidly. Friends were whispering, neighbors were judging, and family was shunning him. People were saying some took off with another guy. Others were claiming she was drowning under hidden debts. What really happened was much more sinister, and David would not find out until days afterward, when he finally played the voicemail. Long before Claire went missing, there were red flags, things that ought to have sent up alarms but didn't. David recalled the initial time he had realized something was off with their bank account. A withdrawal minor, only several $100s, styled as an ATM he didn't know. Was this you? He asked, holding up the statement. Oh yes, she answered too hastily. I needed to pay the plumber in cash. Remember? Our card machine wasn't functioning. It made sense. Why would he question her? She was his wife. He nodded and left. But weeks went by. And there was another. Then another one. Various amounts always described with the same cool voice. Groceries. school outings, emergencies. And then there were the evenings she worked late. Claire said she was working on a large project. Sometimes she even returned home tired. Her top rumpled, her makeup smudged, her face closed. Just another long day, she'd tell him, pecking at his cheek. David wanted to believe her, so he did. For the other possibility, that she was lying, was too agonizing to accept. The deception was made most apparent by money. David liked to think of himself as being responsible. He monitored their bills, their savings, their mortgage payments. But then, late one night, he checked their accounts, and his stomach fell. Thousands of dollars were gone. He scrolled back through history. Hotel visits, high-end dinners, large cash withdrawals. None of them familiar. Claire? He ventured, that night. The statement shaking in his hand. Her face didn't even blink. Her voice was serene. Too serene. Oh, those are business expenses. The company will pay for me. It was a smooth explanation. Simple, rational. But something in her eyes unnerved him. They were too intense, too unblinking. As if practiced. David nodded once more. But his chest constricted with discomfort. Betrayal isn't just about what occurs within a marriage. It's also about what the world outside thinks of it. During the weeks leading up to Claire's disappearance, David began to notice the neighbors talking, furtive looks, hushed words that stopped when he entered a room. One night, while getting his kids from school, another parent stepped forward and said softly, "David, are you all right? I saw Claire last week. And she wasn't herself. She was with someone. A guy I didn't know." David's stomach turned. He smiled hard, waved it off, but inwardly, fear spread like flames. Later that night, he confronted Claire. "Were you with somebody at the cafe last week?" Her response was instantaneous. "Just a coworker." She didn't flinch. And David let it slide again, because admitting his whole life could be a fabrication meant accusing her of lying. When Claire went missing, those rumors turned into accusations. She had to be preparing this for months. A neighbor said, "Didn't you see the signs?" Asked another. The police were courteous but flippant. "Mr. Reynolds, it's okay for adults to leave. If she drained the accounts, then it would be abandonment. But that doesn't necessarily make it a crime." Abandonment, that was the word that struck him like a knife. He wanted to scream that Claire wasn't like that she wouldn't leave her kids, that she wasn't cruel or selfish. But the facts told another story. She was gone, and she had taken it all. The real cost of betrayal isn't in the money. It's in the life that walks away with it. Bills accumulated. Mortgage payments remained unpaid. The children questioned him with no answers to provide. "Where's Mom? When is she coming back?" David had nothing to say. He was buried under confusion, anger, and sadness. Nights were restless. Days were like prolonged nightmares. And worst of all, he began to doubt himself. Perhaps I was a bad husband. Perhaps she was not happy. Perhaps I pushed her away. Because when someone you care about does something dishonorable, your instinct isn't to criticize them. It's to criticize yourself. Days became weeks. And the betrayal spilled over into the world of rumors. One friend affirmed she had seen Claire at the airport with a suitcase. Another insisted that she had heard Claire discussing beginning anew somewhere far away. Some had muttered that Claire had been keeping debts hidden, gambling, addiction. Others swore she had another man. Every rumor pierced David further. Each theory portrayed his wife as a stranger. And yet, despite the avalanche of proof, despite the missing money, despite her vanishing, a little piece of him still rebelled against believing that Claire had betrayed him. Because betrayal, real betrayal, felt too final, too cruel. Perhaps the deepest cut of all wasn't the money, or the rumors, or even her disappearance. It was the silence of their home. Everywhere David looked, there were absences. The jewelry box on her dresser, empty. The family photos, missing. The safe, cleared out. Even her perfume, once lingering in the air, had vanished. The home no longer felt like home. It felt like a crime scene. A crime of abandonment, not violence. A betrayal so complete it stripped away the warmth of all memories. By the second week, David was at his breaking point. He sat in the living room alone. The bills strewn about him. The house dark and empty. He replayed every argument, every look, every moment of uncertainty that he had pushed aside. Did she scheme all this from the beginning? Was our wedding a falsehood? Were the children only a part of her cover? His head reeled with questions. There were no answers. Only silence. Until one evening, he finally opened his phone and browsed through the missed calls and messages. That's when he noticed it. The voicemail that he had ignored. The message that would turn his world around. At this point, David still thought he was the victim of the greatest betrayal. That Claire had left him, taken his money, and ruined their life together. But the reality was quite different. A lot weirder. A lot darker. And as he clicked play on this voicemail, he understood betrayal wasn't even the narrative at all. The actual narrative was only getting started. David stayed away from his phone for nearly a week. He couldn't handle the calls, the inquiries, the sympathy and voices. But one evening, agitated and shattered, he scrolled through his messages. That was when he came across it. One missed voicemail. His fingers trembled as he touched play. David, it's me. If you're listening to this, I don't have a lot of time. Don't believe what you're witnessing. I had no other choice. They forced me to. All that I stole, it wasn't for myself. Check under the floorboard in our room. Please, forgive me. I love you, goodbye. The message stopped. David's heart was racing. What did she say? They made me do this? Who is they? And what's beneath the floorboard? He hurried to their bedroom, yanked up the creaky plank, and discovered a sealed envelope. It contained names, pictures, papers, proof that Claire wasn't who she claimed to be. Halfway through 2 weeks of hell, David had endured enough. His wife was missing, his cash pilfered, his name sullied. Neighbors and friends' gossip hung over him like millstones. The police were of no use. His children's queries tormented him every evening. He believed he knew the story. Claire had betrayed him. She was gone. She had taken everything. But the reality was waiting, concealed in plain view within his phone. It was a Friday evening. The house was dark. Kids sleeping upstairs. David was home alone on the couch, gazing at the subdued light of his phone. Dozens of missed calls, countless texts, family calling to check in, friends expressing sympathy, unknown numbers. Scrolling randomly, his thumb hesitated over something he hadn't seen before. One new voicemail. Dated the morning Claire went missing. He narrowed his eyes in puzzlement. How did he miss it? Shivering hands pushed play. At first, silence. Then barely, the sobbing breaths. And then, Claire's voice. But it was not her voice that he recognized. It was not smooth, steady, or assured. It was shaking, fractured, verging on desperate. David, if you're listening, don't think what you see. I didn't do it. I had no choice. They made me. All the things I stole, it wasn't for me. Please listen well. Check under the floorboard in our bedroom. You'll hear the truth there. I apologize. I love you, farewell. And then click. Silence. David stood rigid. His breath lodged in his throat. His mind swirled with questions. They made me do it? Who is they? What wasn't for her? What's underneath the floorboard? The voicemail was not the voice of a traitor. It was the voice of a person fleeing. A person cornered. A person scared. For the first time since she disappeared, David questioned the tale everyone had fed him. Perhaps Claire hadn't betrayed him. Perhaps she wasn't a thief. Perhaps she was a captive of something much larger. Heart racing. David leapt from the sofa and ran up to the bedroom. The voicemail rang in his mind with each step. Look under the floorboard. He knelt on the carpet and tugged at the loose plank by the wall. One he had seen all those years ago when they moved in. Claire had told him it wasn't worth repairing, that it was fine as it was. He hadn't thought anything of it then. His fingers pushed into the crack now, loosening the board. Dust drifted through the air. Underneath was a little metal box covered in tape. Hands trembling, David pulled it out. For a moment, he just stared. His heart hammered in his chest. The box felt heavier than it should, as though it carried the weight of every unanswered question. With shaking hands, he tore the tape and opened it. Within were documents, photos, and what appeared to be identification cards. A passport with Claire's face. But not Claire's name. Government-stamped documents. Letters in an unreadable language. And at the very bottom, a solitary photo. Claire with two men in suits, younger, scared, and out of place. David's breath was caught. This wasn't the life of a typical suburban wife. This was different. This was dangerous. His thoughts reeled. If Claire wasn't who she claimed to be, then who was she? Why had she kept this for more than 10 years? And what did she mean by "they made me do it"? The story of betrayal no longer fit. She hadn't left them for selfish motives. She had been coerced. But by whom? And why now? David sat on the ground, the box in his lap, trembling. The woman he believed he knew, the woman he loved, was a stranger. And yet, beneath the fear, something new emerged. Hope. If she had left this for him, then that meant she trusted him to discover it. It meant that she was not gone forever. It meant that she cared still. For hours, David combed through the papers in the box. Each paper whispered of a life he had never lived. Witness protection files. Names of individuals he had never known. Notes scribbled in Claire's handwriting. Admonitions, reminders, instructions. There was one paper that chilled his blood. It had dates and times on it. Some of them had "safe" written next to them. Some not safe. The latest was the previous day. Next to it, the word "compromised." David let the paper fall, his heart racing. Whatever life Claire had been living, it had caught up with her. Anger, fear, relief, confusion. David felt it all. He wanted to hate her for the deception, for the years of dishonesty, but he couldn't, because now he realized she hadn't deceived him out of malice. She had deceived him out of love. And now that protection was lost. The betrayal he believed he'd endured wasn't betrayal at all. It was self-sacrifice. Claire hadn't stolen their life. She'd sacrificed her own to keep them safe. But the voicemail left one terrifying possibility. If she said she had no other choice, if she was being coerced, then that meant someone else was calling the shots. And if they could make her vanish, what was stopping them from coming after David and the kids? The possibility made him cold. For the first time, David realized that he wasn't merely a bereaved husband. He was a target. Seated in the darkened bedroom, engulfed by documents and secrets, David knew he was faced with a decision. He could ignore the message, tell himself none of it was important, and attempt to rebuild what was left of his life. Or, he could trace the path Claire had left, investigate deeper, and confront the truth, no matter what it took. His hands trembled as he clenched the picture of Claire. Her eyes, despite the terror in them, looked directly into his. "I love you," her voice whispered once more inside his head. He made his decision. The box in his lap wasn't proof. It was a message. Claire had left it for him, because she knew he would see it, knew he would realize. And now David wasn't merely a husband looking for answers. He was the only one who could solve the mystery of her vanishing. The voicemail had altered everything. The betrayal ceased to be betrayal. The silence ceased to be abandonment. It was an alert. And as David returned the documents to the box, he knew one thing for certain: his existence would never again be the same. Because the voicemail wasn't the end of Claire's tale. It was only the start. The reality was more a shock than a betrayal. Claire had been living a life of false identity. Her actual name was not Claire by any means. She had been a witness years ago in a huge federal sting. She testified against criminal elements, men of power, money, and long memories. The government provided her with a new name, a new existence as a form of protection. That existence had to be safe, immaculate, but somehow they did locate her. The funds she stole, not to betray David, to bribe individuals who threatened her family, the receipt from the hotel, covert meetings with agents attempting to safeguard her, and her vanishing act, not abandonment, but survival. Secrets are like shadows. They get longer the more closely you examine them. And for David, the box beneath the floorboard wasn't a bunch of papers. It was an introduction to a world he never thought his wife was part of. The files, the photographs, the encrypted notes, they all led to one truth. Claire was not Claire after all. David spent hours sitting on the bedroom floor, staring at the files. Each page was a betrayal, yet a discovery. His wife, the woman who sent his kids off to school with lunches, who kissed him goodnight, who squeezed his hand during family movie nights, was not the woman he believed she was. Her passport had a different name on it. Not Claire Reynolds, but Elena Ward instead. Her birthday was different. Her birth city different. Even her parents' names were different. It was like the woman he loved had been made up of thin air. And yet, the writing on the notes belonged to her. The smile in the pictures belonged to her. She wasn't a stranger. She was both individuals combined. Piece by piece, David assembled the pieces. There were court case transcripts, newspaper articles, and letters stamped with federal seals in the box. One document chilled him to the bone. It was an affidavit. At the top, the name Elena Ward. And beneath it, page after page of assertions detailing criminal activity. Names of men, meeting dates, coded language regarding money laundering, weapons deals, threats. Claire no, Elena had testified. Not merely any witness. A crucial witness in a gigantic federal probe that broke up a notorious crime syndicate. David's hands trembled as he understood the implications. His wife hadn't been leading a double life. She had been hiding under government protection. Witness protection. Almost everything suddenly made sense about all of her bizarre behavior. The late nights, the weird phone calls, the fear in her eyes when strangers hung around for too long. She hadn't been cheating on him. She had been being careful. But if she was under witness protection, then her life wasn't really safe. Because the box also showed something sinister. Writings in her own handwriting were scrawled like warnings. They're watching, changed cars twice today. Don't tell David. Don't tell the kids. Every note seethed with fear. She hadn't been just hiding from David. She had been hiding for him. The money stolen. The hotel stays. The sudden vanishing. It all fell into place. The money wasn't hers to enjoy. It was payment to people who had found her. Extortion, blackmail. The hotels weren't rendezvous points with lovers. They were meeting places, desperate attempts to negotiate safety. She hadn't left to abandon them. She had left to protect them. And now David understood. She was still out there alive, but at risk. Relief and anger battled within him. Relief that she hadn't betrayed him as everyone thought. Anger that she had kept this from him for 12 years. He remembered the small things. The way she winced when speeding cars passed by. The late nights spent gazing out the window. The way she refused to speak about her history. He should have known. But how could he? Who would ever think their wife was a witness in protective custody, in hiding from a crime family who wanted to kill her? David pushed his palms against his face and let a broken laugh escape. His life was no longer a tragedy of betrayal. It was a thriller of survival. The thickest pile of papers in the box was a dossier of names. Dozens of them, typed out neatly, some crossed off, others marked in red. Next to many names were scrawled notes in Claire's handwriting. Dangerous, not to be trusted. Possible informant. One name was underlined several times. Marcus Hale. David had no idea who Marcus Hale was. But by the frantic underlines and arrows he must have been significant. Perhaps the man behind the strings. He took a picture of the page with his phone. Something about this name felt important. At the bottom of the box was yet another photograph, unlike the others. In it Claire, Elena, was much younger, seated at a cafe table with two men in suits, agents, David presumed. Her face was strained, her shoulders tense. On the back, in her script, were 3 words. Don't trust them. David's blood chilled. Even those who were supposed to guard her weren't secure. As scary as the reality was, one thing kept David grounded. Claire's voicemail. I love you. Those words reverberated louder than the lies. Louder than the deception. She still loved him. In spite of everything. She didn't leave because she wanted to. She left because she had to. That left him with hope. But with hope came fear. If the individuals she testified against had located her, then it was only a matter of time before they came for him and the children. The mere thought of it made him ill. He had been so obsessed with his heartache, with the notion of betrayal, that he hadn't realized the danger converging. Now that the truth was out, he knew they weren't safe. Not in their house, not anywhere. David sat amidst papers, files, and secrets, his heart racing with a combination of fear and resolve. He had options. He could submit the box to the authorities and pray they assisted. But what if Claire was correct not to trust them? Or he could track down the clues himself, follow the names, learn the truth, and rescue her before it was too late. For the first time in weeks, David felt something new. Purpose. He wasn't a grieving husband anymore. He was a man on a mission. His wife wasn't a liar. She was a survivor. And if she was still out there fighting, then so was he. The betrayal tale was over. The dual existence was reality. And now David had no other choice but to step into it. Because if he didn't, he may never lay eyes on her again. As he put the papers back in the box, his phone vibrated, a text message from an unknown number. One word, stop. David's chest constricted. They knew, whoever they were, they already knew he'd found out the truth. And now he was no longer keeping Claire's secret. He was holding her danger. The dual existence was not hers anymore. It belonged to him. For what felt like hours, David sat glued to the papers, but somehow outside of himself, his mind reeling. The woman he'd believed to be a liar wasn't, she was a survivor. And now she was in trouble. David also came to the horribly specific realization. If they knew who Claire truly was, then they also knew about him, about their children. Suddenly, the emptiness of his vacant home weighed more heavily. The darkness outside his window seemed blacker. He wasn't merely a grieving husband now. He was a target. Some truths are like daggers. They don't merely cut once. They continue to twist, deeper and deeper, until the person you believed you were is lost. For David, the dagger arrived in a solitary text message. One word, one command. Stop. David's hands hovered over the phone. His breathing caught. Whoever had sent the message knew what he had discovered, knew he had the box. His head spun. Was the sender watching him at that moment? Were they outside the house? He hurried to the window and peered through the blinds. A black vehicle idled across the street. Headlights low, windows tinted. His chest constricted. It hadn't been there before. His instincts cried out, they're here. His mind didn't immediately think of himself. It was for his kids upstairs, sleeping peacefully in their bedrooms. Innocent. Unaware, David's fear coalesced into determination. He couldn't afford to let them get trapped in whatever mess Claire had brought with her. He crept quietly through the house, locking doors and checking windows. His ears perked for the sound of footsteps outside. Every groan of the floorboards sounded like a gunshot. For years he'd thought his role as a father was to offer stability. Now his role was to protect. To guard them from foes they couldn't even detect. With shaking fingers, David redialed the voicemail. He heard Claire's words repeated and repeated. I had no choice. Look under the floorboard. Don't believe what you see. Her voice wasn't a confession. It was a map. If she left hints, then she hoped he would follow them, which meant the box was not the end of her tale. It was the start. And if the message stop was intended to frighten him, then it only served to prove one thing. He was close to the truth. The following morning, David received another message. An address this time. No threats, no words, just numbers on a screen. Despite all instinct, he chose to go. He could not hide forever. And he could not rely on the authorities. If Claire would not, then why should he? He made arrangements for his children to remain with his sister, kissed them too long, and drove to the destination. It was a deserted warehouse at the outskirts of town. The type of place where things were hidden. Within, the scent of rust and gasoline filled the air. Bars of light thrust through shattered windows. And in the corner, a man emerged. Tall, sharp suit, cold gaze. David Reynolds, he said smoothly. As if they'd known each other for years. Or perhaps Mr. Claire Reynolds. David's stomach churned. He recognized the name from the dossier in the box. Marcus Hale. The one Claire had circled over and over. You know why you're here, Marcus continued. Your wife owed us. She thought she could disappear. But debts, they don't vanish. Not even with new names and new lives. David's fists clenched. Where is she? Marcus grinned. Alive at least, for the time being. But if you both wish to continue keeping her alive, you'll do as we instruct, Marcus explained. Claire had betrayed his group years before by testifying. She believed the witness protection program would protect her. It didn't. They located her. They coerced her back into their clutches. The money she took wasn't theft. It was ransom, payment, a means to keep her family alive. Now Marcus wanted David to finish what Claire couldn't, deliver something she had hidden away, something he called the ledger. David's voice shook. I don't know what that is. Marcus's smile was chill. Then you'd better learn. Because until we have it, she remains with us. And you, Mr. Reynolds, you'll continue getting our messages. Until the day you don't. The threat was the end of the meeting. Two men walked David back to his car, their stares unyielding. Driving away, his brain reeled. The ledger, the box hadn't said anything about it. Or had it? Perhaps he'd missed something. He rushed home, extracted the files once again, and tore through them like a madman. Pages flew around the floor. And then he spotted it. A piece of paper he hadn't seen earlier, wedged between two files. A message in Claire's handwriting. Ledger, =truth. Hidden where it all began. His heart jumped. Where it all began. He considered, where had their life together started? Not the city, not the house. Earlier than that. Their honeymoon? No. And then it struck him, the tiny antique diner where they'd shared their first date. Somewhere they hadn't been to in years. If Claire was leaving breadcrumbs, that's where she'd leave the last one. Late at night, David pulled into the diner. The neon sign flashed faintly. The parking lot almost deserted. He glided in, heart racing. The waitress hardly glanced his way as he slipped into the booth, where he and Claire had sat. He put his hand under the table, and there it was. A strip of duct tape. He unzipped it back, and removed a small flash drive, coated in a thin layer of dust. His chest constricted. This had to be it. The ledger. But he stashed it as he heard headlights fill the diner windows. The black car once more. Doors closed. Heavy footsteps came closer. Marcus Hale's henchmen. David's gut plummeted. They had tracked him. He ran for the back door, holding on to the flash drive for dear life. Because his did. Bullets echoed through the dark of night, as he ran down the alley, crouching behind dumpsters, gasping for breath. His mind screaming one thing. Claire trusted me. I can't let her down now. Hours passed, him secure in a motel, miles from where he was being hunted. David inserted the flash drive into his computer. Files opened, names, numbers, dates, all the information on Marcus Hale's criminal syndicate made public. Accounts. Transactions. More than enough to take the syndicate down once and for all. And then videos. Recordings of meetings. Faces of influential men, politicians, business executives, all attached to Marcus. David's hands trembled. This wasn't evidence. This was a death warrant, on anyone who had it. Including him. But deep within the files was one final video. David pressed play. The screen went flickery. And Claire was there. Seated in a darkened room, her eyes puffy from crying. David, she whispered softly. If you're seeing this, it means that you discovered the ledger. And it means that I wasn't able to make it back. David's eyes welled up with tears. I held the secret as long as I could, Claire went on. But now it's yours. You have to see things through. Reveal them. Keep the kids safe. And remember, I never abandoned you. I never stopped loving you. Her voice broke on the final words. I'm sorry. The video cut off. David sat there, his chest rising and falling. Claire wasn't only gone. She had set things up, in case she never came back. The betrayal had never been betrayal. It had been sacrifice. And now, the weight of truth, the ultimate twist, was his to bear.